Good Thursday afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in to the PWTorch Fireside Chat, the flagship edition of the show. Welcome on in. I said that twice, but I mean it. Tyler, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, not a ton, which is always good this time of year. So, good.
Yeah,
Good to talk wrestling. A lot to talk about in the peripheral, I would say, right? As
there
Scalp
is.
said last night, next week's a big week in wrestling, at least if you're only AEW focused. But this week, the secondary brands are have the spotlight. So excited to talk about that.
They do. I'm excited to talk about that too. And I think, and not only secondary brands, but I think some secondary talents. We're kind of shined up this week in a variety of ways on both shows on AEW and WWE. So we can talk a little bit about that. And just I don't know, man. There's lots to dig into. First and foremost, thanks everybody for joining us. If you're joining us live, we very much appreciate it. Feel free to comment and ask questions, rant and rave in the chat. We'll get to as much of it as we can. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do so. We're 6 away from the 3,000 mark, 3,000 even on subscribers, and it's just the OCD part of my brain is just not letting me sleep at night, knowing that we're that close. So subscribe if you haven't. Appreciate that. And we've got a lot of great content going up from Tyler, from me, and from others at the Torch. So I think you'll be happy that you did. So click now. Azan, Steve, Zach, Tracy, welcome. Thank you for being here. But let's get started. Tyler, the news of the afternoon is a bit. I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I was a little surprised by hearing it, and Zach, you're killing me. Does it? Yeah, I guess it kind of does. But like, I can't wear the White Sox hat anymore because it's like not baseball season, and they've decided not to actually function like a Major League Baseball team and buy players. So this is my vanilla ice boycott of White Sox baseball. So, but thank you for noticing. I appreciate that.
And maybe your Bulls can tank and get Victor Hoppen. I can't say his last name, but he did the 7'6" guy from France. That is.
Yes.
The next big thing. So maybe you can do that.
Fine with me.
Auden Wampa, I think.
I can't pronounce his name either. Oh God, no, not this. Now I got to go get a new hat. You guys are killing me. You're killing me. Here I try to spice up the look on the YouTube channel, and just getting beat over the head with comment. No, it's all good, guys. Where was I? Oh yes, the news of the afternoon. Sasha Banks heading over to New Japan for an appearance at Wrestle Kingdom 17 this year on January 4th. It's a one-night affair. It's their biggest show of the year for New Japan. It's in the Tokyo Dome. They've just recently, the company who owns New Japan also owns the Stardom property, and they recently crowned an IWGP Women's Champion in formerly Kairi Sane in WWE, and Sasha Banks is going over there for that show. There's no reports as to what she's going to do, if she's going to appear on TV, if she's going to have a match. So she's going to be there, but we don't know in what capacity. Tyler, there's two main angles I want to take this from. But the first is, are you surprised that she's kind of going over there, or that New Japan kind of ponying up like what I would assume is a big chunk of dough in order to get her to appear there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm more surprised than not surprised, but I think the kind of narrative that has not been confirmed by either WWE or Sasha or really anyone tied to either party has been the assumption that she would just go back, quote unquote, home, and this would either signal some cooperation between New Japan and WWE, or a booking that she already had agreed upon, and now it's leaking because she was waiting until 2023 to take appearances, or it's a sign. So it's a sign for anything, which I think is why it's an interesting news story, because you can take it from any angle that you want. But doing that, I think, is probably a smart business decision. Is it going to be a good match? I don't know. I think that's a good reason to test herself, and she's, if you look at the 4 horsewomen, as we tend to do, like, where is she on the work rate standpoint? Probably like number one on athleticism and in-ring ability from that front. I don't know. I mean, I haven't thought about that as broadly, but putting her in that environment is going to really push her to be her best in-ring performer. And I'm curious how that goes. But, from her, it's probably a big money deal. She's a big star for a big event. And I don't necessarily read into one way or the other where she would be going after that point. So surprised and I think intrigued. And she's always been a wrestling fan, but this is more of like a hardcore wrestling fan. I think this would be more of a Bayley situation if she was not part of WWE than a Sasha situation. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, to be honest. Like I just figured that when Sasha was ready to come back, it would be in WWE just because A, they can offer her the most money. B, more and more now, WWE has an open door to other opportunities for their talent. Like they're viewed more positively in that light, where I know that WWE didn't connect her on the Mandalorian project, but there's countless ways that Sasha Banks' star can be shine brighter under the WWE umbrella than out there in New Japan of all places. And so to me, this is very interesting because I think it shows that Sasha is still very much interested in being a professional wrestler. Like you see her out there like doing the acting stuff, she's doing modeling things. She's got a lot of opportunities to do stuff outside of professional wrestling. But if you're going to go over to New Japan and just appear on their show or work on their show in some capacity, like I think you got to still have like that wrestling bug, and I think that's an interesting thing to note. It's also something very different. Like Sasha is pretty much WWE homegrown talent that knows their system, but has talked about wanting to be well versed in just the art of wrestling in general. So I think this is a really good way for her to, as you said, to challenge herself and to experience something new. I also think that they ponied up some big dough to get her, and she's maintained that she's going to have a high price tag outside of WWE in order to kind of go places. She's not going to take like random indie bookings just to show her face. And so I think that means that she can move the needle for New Japan also, that she can get some more or like draw some more eyes from the United States and some more people subscribing to New Japan World for that Wrestle Kingdom show. So it's a really it's really interesting for me to top to bottom. So when you hear, Tyler, like, hey, okay, she's going to appear at New Japan Wrestle Kingdom show in the Tokyo Dome, do you get the sense of like, okay, well, it's obviously going to be a match, or she's going to be out like at ringside? Like I guess I have trouble going, okay, if she's going to appear, how does she appear without having a match of some kind? And so,
yeah, I mean, I guess the thought of her not having a match didn't even cross my mind, because it'd be so disappointing to be like, why are you even doing this if you're going to show up and you'd have to then say like challenge the person that wins the title and set up that match, which you think would be formerly known Kairi Sane there. But that seems like the match to make, and I don't think she'd be walking out of there as the IWGP Women's Champion. That would say something different on where this is going, her length there, where she would be working stateside if she does work anywhere full time, which I think her more part time is more of an option, I think, than ever with this is really what I'm thinking here. But yeah, if it's not a match, then this is like much to do about nothing, and it's a little bit like promoting The Rock years ago in WWE to be the MC of WrestleMania, one of the worst WrestleManias of all time, and not because of that per se. I mean, his match with Eric Rowan is a classic, I would say, but I wouldn't follow in the footsteps of The Rock at WrestleMania 32 is what I'm trying to say.
No, and that totally wouldn't fit like the New Japan, like the New Japan, just the culture of that company and that show. Like they have special MCs cutting promos and lighting their name on fire like on the entrance ramp. Like that's just not what they do. So to me this means that like if the women's title match for Wrestle Kingdom is already booked, it's like, okay, so who can she work with? I mean, certainly there's somebody, but
that's what like it'd be rough if she just came there and challenged Kyrie after she won her match. That would be like a lame presentation of her, in my opinion, to like book this up, and that certainly could be the case, and that would extend kind of the trajectory, and then I think more aligned to her working big shows in AEW part-time as opposed to then going full-time to WWE, because I don't think she could get that same Brock Lesnar schedule in WWE at this point, if I had to guess.
Yeah. So what do you make of this then from a WWE perspective? If Sasha Banks is going elsewhere, and there's a couple things that you can connect the dots on here that there's no like news reason to connect them, but earlier this week she filed to trademark her name, Mercedes Vernado. In November, there were trademarks out there for different like Mercedes type catchphrases, like "Money Mercedes" or some of the effect. I don't have them all memorized. And then you have last night on Dynamite, Britt Baker challenging Saraya to a tag match a month in advance, and that date being a week after Wrestle Kingdom. January 11th is the date that she challenged her to have that tag team match, and Saraya needs to find a partner. I think you can see where I'm going with this. It's as I said, I'm not breaking news here, but if you like want to like kind of connect some of those dots, you can reasonably predict or kind of fantasy book your way into like, hey, that's going to be Sasha. She's going to work Wrestle Kingdom, and then she's going to be Saraya's surprise partner. I think that's kind of a lame way to debut her, to be honest, but you can't. I can't totally discount that at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think any possibility is open. I think if you're from the WWE perspective, as your initial question was there, this is a not do or die, but it's either really good or really bad, right? Like, I assume this goes well for Sasha. They probably get more buys than they thought they were going to get, and they attribute that to her, a la Chris Jericho coming a couple years ago,
right?
It being the most bought. On I think it was Fight had the pay-per-view maybe or whatever. Like, people were just buying the straight up pay-per-view and getting into New Japan World subscriptions and things like that. So if there's the similar thing there, then that only ups her price tag if you're WWE from their perspective, right? So more often than not, like, this is going to mean that they have to pay her more to come back, I think is the negative from a WWE perspective. And yeah, I mean, what you're laying out makes sense. Again, like everything AEW, we're on such a short history, and the track record has been what it's been in lots of areas. And Tony's ponied up and gotten Saraya. That's the first big free agent person he's gotten, and this would be number 2. So not to say it's impossible, but that way to debut her would be lame. I agree. But it's in LA. Is it in front of the Discovery, Time Warner executives again? Maybe, and you want to get a big pop like you got with MJF last time to make sure that your next TV, which is even closer than the last time they were in LA, that could be a good reason. They'd be like, oh yeah, she's a big star, and you have her, you have Jericho, you have other people that they are tangentially aware of, at least, to make you look like a strong brand. So all that meta stuff plays into it here. I mean, literally, I watched the episode last night, a little delayed than usual. I didn't do a report, but that of the many convoluted, and I didn't hate last night's episode of Dynamite, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but of the many convoluted backstage segments, I did not infer that immediately that it was a tag match coming up. I thought it was someone just versus Saraya one-on-one that Britt was going to handpick. But I think you're right now, obviously reporting and watching it back and everything. But that's a whole nother story to like set it up. Hopefully they push it hard, and if they do, that would tell me that. But again, I'm curious what you think too. Would you lean her being AEW regular, which is whatever, once a month on Rampage, or would she be a part-time person who works big shows and big branded Dynamites?
I'm taking option 3 actually. I'm still not convinced that she's going to be in AEW. Period. Like I just don't. I see this as more of maybe an olive branch between WWE and New Japan. I mean they're working with Carl Anderson, right? I mean obviously that talent is a lot less so than Sasha Banks, but there's clearly a relationship there, and I just don't know how Sasha Banks fits with AEW, to be honest. I mean, who like if I'm her, I think she's a bigger star in WWE, and that's not a knock on AEW, but it's like if she goes to AEW, she works with Britt Baker, okay, and then that's the only person, in Jade Cargill, I guess. Those are the only 2 women that are on her level in terms of star power, and even then, she's significantly above them. I would say. So, and then once you go, there's some good matches she can have. I mean, she could work with Toni Storm. She could work with Jamie Hayter. She could work with Hikaru Shida, Rio. I mean, there's a lot of talent that she can work with, but none of that screams like huge business or big pay-per-view main events to me. And so no, I'm kind of still in the camp of like, yep, this is happening. But until I see her walk out that ramp on AEW Dynamite, I won't believe it until I see it. Like, it just, like, WWE is such a good fit for her. And even more so now with Paul Levesque, in charge. And so that's where I'm at with it. Am I crazy? Like, am I crazy to think that that's a possibility? Like, it's not that I just don't see it with her in AEW. She's a great wrestler, but I think she wants to be like a tip top premier level type star. And, I mean, AEW has its claws in other things and in other companies and in other entertainment ventures, but not like WWE does. It's a different level. So yeah, am I crazy, man?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think if you were going to be like, hey, I'm going to be Sasha Banks, the wrestler again. I've had my time off. I want to do that again. Obviously, WWE is the better option of the two. You have a built-in brand. You're going to be pushed forever. You're going to make as much money in that zone that you've made, probably more than before. But it's more about, I think, and this is 2 guys, just assuming what Sasha wants to, or what Mercedes wants to do with her life.
Yeah, right.
If you want to have more freedom, do more acting, do more whatever you want to do outside of wrestling, I think that part-time, not part-time, whatever you want to call it, right, in AEW would be more beneficial. And if Tony Khan gives her a lot more leeway to do whatever, as he's shown with lots of people, right? I mean, everyone's been able to do basically any project they want to, and then be a full-time member of the roster. So I think there's pros and cons to everything. I think if you wanted to, if I were her, and I'm not, I would probably go to AEW just to see what it's like, and to try and like be in another brand and see if that's how power it goes. But again, you're betting on yourself, and just something to do. But that I would do that more so to have the freedom to do more acting, to do more whatever you want to do. And I think WWE, that is a grind, and we'll see if Triple H would make any reservations, or would do anything for her to let her do that. I don't know if that would be the case, but so yeah, that's where I am. I just don't think this story, her being on a show with other AEW people, I don't think that confirms anything. I think all 3 options are on the table, right? Her doing what she wants to do and doing spot shows for big money outside of both companies, going to AEW and going to WWE are all pretty much even at this point for me.
Yeah. I think that that's fair. I don't think you can read into it at all, especially because that the door between WWE and New Japan is cracked open a smidge, and for whatever that means. Again, it's a lot easier to negotiate sharing Carl Anderson than it is Sasha Banks, I'm sure. No knock on Carl Anderson, except kind of a knock on Carl Anderson. Anything else, man, on Sasha Banks? I mean, it's an interesting story. I mean, if she has a match over there and Kyrie's already taken, like I don't follow the Stardom product as closely as I should, and that I'll probably will now, just to start getting a sense of who she could potentially work with. But is there anybody on your radar that makes sense for her to wrestle on that show if she does have a match? Because you called out the point of like, hey, maybe they have that match and then Sasha appears. That, I mean, I'm scared that might be what is actually in the cards, just because it's like, why would Sasha go over there and not wrestle like the champion? You know, if like why would you do that? But again, I don't know the Stardom roster all that well, and so if there is other women on that show that she could work with, maybe it does make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a similar boat with you from the roster standpoint, so I'm sure I see Rand has a suggestion here in the chat, so I'm sure someone in the chat will have a better take than you or I on this exact thing. But yeah, I mean, I think no matter what, if you're Stardom, right, like if you have someone that you think is an up-and-comer or someone to spotlight, this is the place to do it, right? And then you can even give Mercedes a win, but you know everyone's going to watch it no matter who you put in that match if she does have a match. So I think there is, I think that's totally fine. And then you can do that same thing and then have her call out Kyrie at the end of her match as well, which I think would be the best way to do it if there's already a bunch of match booked. So I think just her, it's like, I'm trying to remember what Jon Moxley's first match in New Japan was.
Juice. It was Juice Robinson.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I was like, got to work early and was watching that on my laptop at my desk to watch that because that was so intriguing just to see Moxley in New Japan. So I think it'll be similar, probably even more so because of
that's a good comparison. That's a smart call out because I mean Moxley didn't come in there and wrestle Okada right away. I still don't think he's wrestled Okada, has he? I don't think so. How weird is that?
Unless they were in the same G1 block, but I don't think they were.
I don't think they were. Yeah. Maybe they were. I don't remember. But it's weird that they haven't wrestled yet. But my point is that he wrestled Juice Robinson, and it was still a really big deal. And that's a smart call out. All right, well, how about we jump quickly into Dynamite and just chat about that for a bit. You mentioned the segment with Britt Baker and Saraya, and dude, man, I'm at the point where I think with them, and this is not the biggest story coming out of the show, so it's more of like a pet peeve at this point for me because it's certainly not a major talking point, but they just don't have any chemistry out there together, the two of them, whether it's in the ring or it's on a promo or it's backstage. It's just like oil and vinegar, man. I don't think they fit at all. Like Britt Baker talking about how Jamie Hayter's always at her side and forgetting that she's not at her side and having to call out the fact that, except that she's not here now. And then the angle was confusing that they set up and you had to listen to it 2-3 times if you wanted to understand what they're saying. It's just like, dude, these two, get them away from each other. Start over because it's not working for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you too. I mean, of two major, my eyes glazing over during backstage video segments, this was far less of that than the William Regal thing. I know people like that. I'd love to talk about that. I know you didn't like it either. Just knowing you as a
no, we have to talk about it because it's one of the bigger stories.
It's not as bad as that, in my opinion. But this was in the same graduating class of that valedictorian effort by William Regal and Tony Schiavone and Tony Khan. But yeah, I just like you said, there's no chemistry. Britt is always going to lean on something that is not good for her character. And, this presumably, I'd love to know, once AEW churns some talent and we get some interviews with people that worked at AEW production, have they ever shot a backstage video promo more than once? Because good Lord, how could you be like, killed it, guys, let's get out of here. You're working dark or you're working Rampage. You're not working in the match. You have time to redo some stuff if it's not even 80% there. So that's, a pet peeve again, like you agree with on AEW in general, that has become more apparent over time for me. But
it's so true. It's so true though, because it's like, and now I don't know whether or not they did this thing live. I guess there's a chance that they did. I got to go back and rewatch it. So if it's live, obviously this doesn't apply. But if it's taped, like, you got to recut that. You cannot have Britt Baker just talk about Jamie Hayter always being next to her, and then have her look over there and realize that she's not next to her, and then just cut, start over, and just don't say that, and don't look that way. You cannot have that. And so again, it's on. If it was live, then obviously you can't redo it. But you can't make those mistakes either if it's live. Like, it's not like if it's live you just get like a free reign to like kind of to jack up whatever you want. Like, you got to be buttoned up. You got to be better than that. Like, you got to treat it like you're live in front of a million people. And boy, that wasn't it.
Yeah. If I was in the back of the room, I would be like, why is this live? Like, there's no reason for it to be live when, there's no tangible difference besides like the adrenaline pumping when you're there. I guess that could be the, if a Billy Gunn is like, no, you got to do all these promos live. All the best promos we did were live. And then you got to go out there and sink or swim. Like, well, maybe for some talent, for Ricky Starks, yes, we can do that. For Britt and Saraya, who have had issues being live, then maybe not. Maybe do a case-by-case basis and earn that. Like, when you're hitting your promos on the first take, then yeah, okay, you guys are upgraded to live. Congratulations, something like that. But again, that's kind of my own thing that was outside your question. But yes, I think breaking them apart. And if you want to argue that laid the seeds for Britt and Jamie not to be friends anymore, I mean, we've seen that many times and it hasn't paid off. So I don't give credit for that sort of stuff. But I think they both need to be doing their own thing, and they'd both be better off with character-wise if Saraya is just like destroying Nyla Rose as a heel and getting wins, and if Britt Baker was beating Sky Blue, in this spot, rather both of them have a match last night and doing that than what we saw.
Yeah. And Tracy, to your point about, I clicked the wrong button. Maybe it was on purpose to show the divide between them. It could be. That could be what they were trying to go for there. I just don't think they hit on it. Like, I think that it came across as just minor league instead of like, ooh, here's some nuanced storytelling, And so if it was the purpose to show that, I just think you want to make it a little more clear, like, do it in a way that makes more sense, that doesn't look like, oh, Britt Baker just jacked up the promo like that. And I'd also say too, that's just kind of like, oh, because she's not standing right next to you, then like that's gonna like put the relationship like into flames. Like that's just, I don't know. I just think that's kind of a weak way to get to pull the trigger on that story, But that's me. But again, to me, it looked like she just messed it up more than anything. And so I guess I would say that even if that was the thing or the point, you have to execute better, You just have to execute better.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay, you mentioned the William Regal thing. Disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the only way I can like put it. Like, that's a freaking train wreck of a pre-tape. Like, that shouldn't have made air at all. Like, I think they were better off just leaving it alone altogether. Like, okay, we heard MJF last week. He explained the situation. Okay, then he got attacked, and now William Regal's good again, and Danielson is by his side. Everything else could stay the exact same. Blackpool Combat Club can cut a promo and the same promo, but what in the hell was that? Like a retroactive, like, only play this if I'm injured thing? Like, what in the name of? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was like literally like an action movie where it's like, if you're watching this, that means I've died, and now you have to complete the mission. In my that was the idea behind it. Obviously, it's like, hey, this would be great, and just Regal going out as a babyface, and like, because this was recorded in kayfabe, right? This was recorded they
said 2 weeks ago
after Full Gear, right? It was like the Wednesday or something, I guess. It didn't matter, but like, yeah, it was just. I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but it was one of the worst things I've ever seen on AEW TV. From like if you don't like the lack of tagging in tag matches, if you don't like, whatever, not selling, whatever. I mean, this is like the ultimate of like what you're watching is super fake and all that stuff. It was like the worst example of what pro wrestling is, to make someone look good on the way out that is leaving for another company. So it didn't work in character. It didn't work for the Blackpool Combat Club. It didn't make anybody look better. It made MJF look like he got kind of double-crossed for the second time. It made Blackpool Combat Club look stupid for following a guy like that. So everyone that's like here after the fact looks dumb for listening to this person in general. The only person that looks smart is Excalibur for not taking his sexual advances on commentary, I think, after all this. And then from a meta standpoint, it was like, I don't know. Tony Khan's like a super nice guy. I think that's been confirmed from a lot of his actions. But like, man, if you're like, contracts excluded, if you're like leaving to go back to the competition, and yeah, you're a legend, you're whatever, like, I'm not giving you time on my television program to look like a hero on the way out when you're, leaving me for the competition and going to have a key role as my, I don't know. It's like, I know some companies would, but wrestling's different than like a sporting, if you have a assistant GM who goes to be the GM of another team, like, yes, you thank them on Twitter, etc. But like, I don't know, this is different. This is wrestling. And so please don't give me those comparisons.
Well, and it's like, it's on TV too. It's part of the story. Like, if AEW corporate wants to send out, hey, thank you to William Regal, like, okay, like, perfect, that's fine. Yeah, but not on your TV. And here's the thing. And Zach, like, it was that bad. Like, I think it was that bad. Like, there wasn't a redeeming quality of it. I mean, like, I think the idea, just because an idea is clever doesn't mean it's not bad. It can be clever and bad at the same time, which is what I think this was.
But it's
I don't think right, and I would argue that point. I was giving you that, but also, like, I don't know what there was left to really explain. That was the kind of the root. Like, after you kind of wade through all the, okay, this is bad, and that explanation sucked, and really the shot of it sucked, and Regal was a little weird, and none of it made sense. But even when you wade through all that, I don't know that it like was necessary. Like, I think you got it last week. Like, you didn't need to retroactively like make William Regal a babyface. Like, sometimes you just got to let something breathe on its own. And you knew he was a good guy after what happened last week. You had Bryan Danielson out there next to him. That was a foregone thing. Like, you didn't have to play this card. This is overdoing it. This is just trying to squeeze the life out of something when it didn't need it. And instead you just got this, go ahead.
Yeah. And I would say the chat has got on this correctly. And, I've said it many times here, right? Like,
you did. I knew you were going to take it there. I knew.
I'd be happy to. Like, you filter everything through Jon Moxley in 2022 in AEW, like, if it's good or not. And Moxley's reaction as the chat has talked here, like, he's like, well, what in the hell was that? And that's me putting it nicely. And he just like, well, anyway, that sucked. Let's get on to the real things that are good. And like, that's like, it didn't save the segment, but I was like, oh God, thank God Jon Moxley is here, because like, he's
and it's telling, because it's like now look, I think like the reverse of that is you don't like, and it put Jon Moxley in a bad position, because it's like you don't want him to ignore the fact that Regal screwed him over, but addressing whatever the hell that was in that promo was just not worth it. Like, it just wasn't worth the time. It was better off to just punt it and just eat looking like you're okay losing the world title that way than it was to actually address those comments. And that's when you're in a bad situation. Moxley or not, or anybody. But when it's better to just punt, that's not good.
It's not good. And I'm sure if not, someone please do it. There's probably a cut if you just take the left side of that angle and just watch Tony Schiavone listen to this whole explanation. I'm sure you could like superimpose like another thing happening that, you make a meme of Tony Schiavone being like, I mean, that was like the whole pro was him being like, legitimately like, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is
yes, I know. I know.
I mean, yeah, it was like the worst cheesy action movie writing that I've seen, and it was, I don't know, I just don't even know. Like, if someone can please give me, if Zach is there, he can give me like the bullet points on what I was supposed to know there, right? Like, Regal was a double agent for Max on purpose to make him stronger, but then he made MJF the super heel to then make the Blackpool Combat Club stronger and to like make sure Wheeler Yuta knows that to get ahead you have to backstab people, right? I think that's like the shtick of the whole thing, right? Did I miss anything?
I mean, no, but that's ridiculous. But
which is like fine. That's all fine in theory. Just the execution of it. I mean, it was probably a minute. It felt like an hour of explaining and like, I'm here for like cool, innovative ideas in wrestling and every. I think that's been clear. But this was just a big mess.
A big mess. And now it's fine. I think, well, for better or worse, it's finally, Sean going to jump.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. You don't even want to explain it, Tyler. It'll make your head hurt. Yeah. LOL. Yeah, that's a pretty good way to put it. Sean,
Wheeler Yuta turns in like a year. I'm sure that'll be like the answer on commentary. Then we'll be like, what are they talking about? So,
a rough night out of the office for that story, and one that, just never, as we talked about, just never really found its footing, in a certain direction. It was like, I think like the whole feud, the whole Moxley MJF title thing was just like, hey, let's create a bunch of misdirection and see like if we can create some intrigue that way. And maybe they did, but in the end, it came out flat, and now you're kind of right back where you started. And I think that's okay. I think that was necessary. Like that promo last week with MJF, as I said on this show, wasn't great, but it served a larger purpose. And to kind of pivot away from Regal, I think we saw that larger purpose pay off in that promo segment with MJF and Ricky Starks. Like MJF was like, he kind of just put all that Moxley Regal stuff behind him essentially, and just focused on Starks and focused on getting heat and focused on being a heel character, and that worked. And I thought like he did the job of a heel out there in that instance, which is to set the table for the babyface. And man, like MJF set that table, and Ricky Starks was there and delivered on it. And so I think on one show, I'm serious when I say this. Like I think that Ricky Starks promo was the best piece of television all year for AEW for a multitude of different reasons. And obviously a lot of the responsibility lies with him on that, but it lies with MJF too for doing the job of the heel and shining up the babyface so that the babyface can deliver a promo like that, have it make sense, allow for the fans to get behind him. There was a lot that those two were juggling there, and I thought it was an absolute grand slam.
Yeah, so that's like the good thing about pro wrestling, right? Is like, you can have like a bad thing, and then like the next week you can almost like forget about it, and like, hey, now you're on a good path, right? And it's all about the, the vibes of the situation, right? Like the good thing with the Regal stuff, it's over, right? Like we don't have to worry about that anymore. And also Moxley saying, hopefully, the Blackpool Combat Club and JAS is over after Saturday. So both those things, end a chapter. Let's all do something better, and that's what you're talking about with this promo was, all the stuff with MJF, it was supposed to be with him and Punk, and that was supposed to be a whole thing, and it fell apart, and it was clumsy to get there. It was not good overall, that whole story. But this promo was incredible. For the Regal thing being one of the worst things I've seen on AEW TV, this is one of the best things I've seen on AEW TV in the same episode. That's why I was still high on the episode in general, even though the Regal thing was there. And both guys juggled a ton of stuff. it's kind of disappointing that the feud is, ending next week. It's a
Yeah.
good example of like a quick feud and how you can do there, but I think there'll be more down the road, presumably if Ricky Starks and MJF are both still there in 2024, 2025. But this feels like when MJF Starks 3 happens, it's going to be like a big, a double or nothing main event, something like that. And this, showed what I think people in the chat, people in the space have said about Ricky Starks for years, and his potential was on display last night. That if you just watch Dynamite, I don't know if you've seen a lot of that, and that's not his fault. It's just more like the position he's been put in. But MJF was also great, and I took the L with Zach from Texas last night on Twitter because I didn't think that MJF would get booed and Ricky Starks would get cheered even in Texas, and I was wrong, happily wrong. So I'm glad we take that L. But yeah, they are, for all the things of like, hey, they're going to fight upstream with MJF as a heel. Last night it worked. If he gets booed, and now everyone loves Ricky Starks if they didn't before, and he beats him next week in underhanded fashion and is booed consistently after the fact, huge slam dunk, home run promo here, and just bolsters the stock of both guys, and especially Ricky Starks. So loved it.
Yeah, I mean, it really was good. And I mean, do you think that this promo, like, here's my thing. It's like, I hope that in AEW and with Tony Khan, that there's an avenue to, when you hit a home run like he hit, that you just become more of a player because you are one, right? I think you saw that play out with the Acclaimed in a very big way, where, hey, they went out there, they did what they had to do, they got over the scissor thing, daddy ass, all that stuff, and then Tony Khan ran with it, and now they're clearly at a higher level. We'll talk about that match next, but they're treated like bigger stars because of how they performed. I don't think that the Acclaimed were like positioned to get this type of push. I think they were just, they got over and kind of forced Tony Khan's hand in a really good way. And then you see somebody like FTR, they're not getting the same type of push. Like somebody like Darby Allin, who I think was hotter earlier on in the company's tenure, not get like a traditional push. Even somebody like Orange Cassidy, I think, he was having one-on-one pay-per-view matches with Chris Jericho. Now he's winning that feud, by the way. And now he's kind of, with the All Atlantic Championship toiling away on Rampage. So there's hits and misses. But I hope that like this opens more doors for Ricky Starks, because he is a talented guy. You saw it. The crowd there's an investment there that they've made. I know it was Austin, but I think the reaction is probably pretty similar anywhere. That's a pretty fiery babyface promo. And like, you just want to give opportunities for your talent to know that, hey, if you hit a home run like that, like you're going to go places. It doesn't mean you hit your home run and he's not going to win the world title on Wednesday. I think we can both agree on that. But does it position him for more pay-per-view matches? Can he get more time on Dynamite? Like I just think that you want to continue riding that wave of momentum, because I think he ignited some fire last night, and I want to see Tony Khan go with that.
Yeah, for sure. And while you're talking, I put the rating in the chat. You talked off air about Dave Meltzer reported that some cable outlets were having issues about 30 million boxes, and he kind of came in thinking the rating was going to be low. It was my guess. Heard from somebody with some sourcing somewhere. But yeah, I think that's a good number based on that sort of thing, and it was kind of matched more than last week. So I think that's a positive sign for AEW.
Yeah.
But to get back to exactly. I mean, with Starks, the one thing I was thinking about, I don't know if you or anyone in the chat thought this as well when this promo was happening last night, but I was like, he'd be so good in WWE. It just feels like
I did.
Like more his company, like what Austin Theory's doing that we both like. I think Ricky Starks could do that like times like 180%. Of that, and similar sizes. I think I don't know the height and weight on both guys, but it was like not, and that's not like a negative, because I think you can do that in AEW. You can transition and have stars that are like that. I mean, obviously, MJF, I think, is a little better than AEW for the leeway he gets. I think he'd be frustrated with getting promos written for him and whatnot. But Stark showed that he had it. And, yeah, I mean, the stuff with kind of like being the mini Rock, I think could work in WWE a little bit as well. But, yeah, and as Azan says here, I think WWE put him as a mid-carder. I think that's true, too, but so is Theory, right? Like, everyone's a mid-carder but Roman, technically, at this point.
Well, right? I mean, and Ricky's he's in the mid-card in AEW, too. Yeah. I mean, it's like, not like... Yeah. But, I mean, here's the thing, and this is why having two companies is really strong, because he's going to probably get paid more money. He's going to, maybe negotiate a better opportunity for himself. And I mean, who knows what will happen? I know he's tight with Cody. I mean, and Cody's over there. So, I mean, I think there's certainly going to be an opportunity for him to jump for sure. But like, but it's performances like this that you have, when you're Tony Khan, you got to look at it and go, okay, like, how far can we take this? Can we use this? Because now, like, I think talent's going to be more open to going back to WWE. Like, if there's opportunity there, like, because there's a different type of opportunity there now where somebody like Starks can thrive. So yeah, I mean, it was just a great night at the office for him, I mean, and you could kind of sense that, like, what I liked about it was there was like a real, like, authenticity behind it. Like, you could feel like that. Yeah, he's saying the words in like a sense of the story, right? Just the story that they're trying to tell on TV. But there was just it was like jacked and juiced with energy of real life. Man, like, this is my opportunity and I'm taking it and I'm going to just absolutely crush it. Like, I think there was that kind of like human thing that you could kind of notice in terms of how he was saying his words and body language. And I also like the fact that he used some meta stuff. Like, he used the MJF leaving ahead of Double or Nothing. He talked about that a little bit, but like, he used it to enhance like the narrative, but it wasn't exclusively the narrative. And that's where I kind of green light meta is if it can supplement the story that's in the ring that anybody can understand, thumbs up, go ahead. Like, that adds like a little bit of a layer, but it can't exclusively be that. And I thought he walked that line like really well last night too.
Yeah, I agree. And it helped to, as the comments are getting into a little bit, at least with Ren here, about, MJF kind of doing a similar shtick, but having that fiery babyface to bounce off and have people want to cheer and win, which is what me and you talk about heels and babyfaces being important. Not everything has to be as sort of generic as WWE superhero versus bad guy. You can be a little nuanced, but this shows like why to have a super heel, you need a good babyface to bounce off, or else no one cares. They're going to cheer for the heel because they're cooler. And this is a good example of that, as has worked and will work forever. Which is why I think I'm aligning more towards this is, maybe not the right decision, but a potentially good decision. If you have him, if you have Starks, you have Kingston, you have Orange Cassidy, you have you have Darby. If you heat him up, you have a lot of people that the crowd can get behind and cheer against MJF. And he can do kind of the same thing over and over again, and it can work until someone beats him, just like Roman, and is aligned as a superstar.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. What do you think? I mean, I'm assuming you think that they're going to keep the title on MJF next week. With that said, how do you do it? I mean, or do you worry about protecting Starks or not? Like, I mean, how do you handle that match next week?
Yeah, I mean, I would say from the trajectory of the MJF character, you almost have to beat him with some underhanded tactics, right? That's how he's won everything of note, and he's lost every time he hasn't been able to pull it off. So it would be, I don't know. I don't think it's a huge deal either way. If you beat him clean, I think that'd be totally fine. But I think the way that he thinks of this character is that, he will, and this is for, also another convoluted thing, this is for the Diamond Ring since Ricky Starks won the Battle Royal, or he gets another match later. Like, literally, I have no idea. And I watch the show and I cover it. And so that's not, again, I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, but like, so the reason I bring that up is, like, does MJF use the diamond ring still? Because I thought he was going to be using the brass knuckles, but
well, he's got to win the diamond. I mean, so next week's match, I think, is for both things. I think so. He has to win to keep the diamond ring, and then he can use it. That's how I understand it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Because that was the winner got a shot, and it would be done for Ricky to challenge twice in so many weeks. Right. So yeah, hopefully that's the case. Yeah, I think it's just him using the diamond ring, right? Like you've seen with his promos, he tends to, those broad strokes of the character seem to be pretty consistent. So I think that I'd be shocked if he didn't use the diamond ring.
Yeah, and I'm right there with it. And I think that's exactly what should happen. Like I mean, for as great as Ricky Stark's promo was, I don't think you have to go out of your way to change the MJF kind of story, whatever that is going to be, to serve him. Like he's still not at that place yet. Like this put him in a different conversation, no question. But MJF still is the top star by far, and he just won the world title, so it's like, yeah, I think you got to do what you got to do for MJF here. But either way, I think Ricky, depending on how the match goes, as long as it's like he kind of puts up a fighting effort, I think you want to do a couple really good near falls, and then have MJF cheat to win. I mean, that's his MO, and I wouldn't shy away from that. That's a lot of that is where he gets some of his heat. So, I think that's perfect. That's a perfect way to do it, and indirectly it does protect Starks too.
Yeah. So, can I do one more thing on the rating from last night?
Yeah, do it.
I was looking through it. So I'm just like, from a business standpoint, not whatever we thought about the show, whatever, but AEW is third in the rating behind 2 NBA games on ESPN, or the 2 hours in the same game. But if you're Warner Discovery executive today and you're seeing these ratings that they press all before we did, you've got this on TBS, and you had the NHL, which my team got beat 9-4 last night by the Buffalo Sabres, so that was rough. But you have the NHL on the other channel that you paid much, much more money for, and that did not make the top 50 rated things. Now it's a blowout between 2 mid-market teams, but like if you're looking at that, like from just like what you can think, like, hey, AEW, are they going to make more money next time? Like almost certainly, because if that's outpacing one of the big 4 or 5, however you look at it, sports brands on prime time on cable, and this is obliterating it, that just tells you that there is value. Obviously, I think all of us know that, but just to see that, like you would think, like if you ask a layperson, hey, what's going to do more, some hockey on cable or some pro wrestling? I think they would definitely say hockey, and pro wrestling destroyed it. So.
Well, and I think, and that's important to call out. That's funny.
Steve, I was laughing at Steve's thing. So.
When I call out the fact that, like, okay, 800,000 is not what you want if you're AEW. I mean, that's from more often than not, that's from a just product perspective. They, like, AEW is going to get an increase. If their parent company, or not the parent company, but if that TV company wants that product on the air, like they're gonna get an increase because of where they finish, alone. Like that's like you can't beat that. But so that works. That's gonna serve Warner in a big way. But you still have lost viewership, over last year, and so that's still a problem that you want to address. So I call that out because, like, both things can be happening at the same time. You can still be very well positioned for a TV deal. I mean, think about it. When WWE signed with Fox in 2018 or whatever, the ratings, like from a year over year perspective, were awful. But what those ratings were, that number still held a lot of value to Fox, and so that deal still gets signed. So the same thing is happening here. So I just want to, I'll get off the soapbox, but I just want to call that out. Like, just because you're declining in viewership doesn't mean you're still not valuable to a TV property out there.
Agreed.
But you gotta wonder though, man. Like when does that like gold mine dry up? You know, like when? I mean, at some point, you know, I got to assume they're not going to be shelling out this kind of money because the return just won't be there at some point. But I don't know when it is. But you know, you got to think that maybe it's not 5 years from now, maybe it's not 10 years from now, but at some point, I would imagine that well is going to go dry.
Yeah, not to be like a media podcast here as we're not.
Yeah, seriously.
I would presume that there will be other players that step in and fill the vacuum. You know, if you have an Apple and Amazon, if Meta does something like that, you know, those big tech companies that have money to burn can be the new, you know, as we see with big conglomerate corporations like an AT&T is a lot more. They were the Apple of their time, grabbed everything, accumulated a ton of debt, and now are kind of like a zombie company. I think that's kind of the trajectory for big companies. So if these big cable providers kind of go that way, and then these tech companies come in and do the same thing, I wouldn't be surprised. As like a 30-year, 40-year view on this.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Good point. Real quick, and then we got to get to some WWE NXT stuff. Andy, is the boss Sasha Banks really coming to Japan? She's one of my favorite WWE wrestlers of all time. I think there's going to be a lot of people, Andy, that feel your way. My question to you is, if you don't mind, and if you're still with us, like, will her appearing in New Japan entice you to find Wrestle Kingdom, order a subscription to New Japan, and watch her at the Wrestle Kingdom show? Like, I'm just trying to figure out with one person here, like what that impact of her moving will be. Is it like, okay, she's gone, now I can't watch her, or no, I'm going to do what I have to do to make sure that I do? Let us know. I'm interested into what your thought is there. Just as a fan, Joel, you're always stirring the pot of trouble, sir. Always stirring the pot of trouble. Thanks for being here, man. Okay, so let's talk NXT for a little bit. We don't talk NXT too often on this show. Mainly because it's Tuesday. There's a lot of other news that kind of like bombards it. But there's a pretty interesting show happening on Saturday night after the Ring of Honor show. There's 2 Iron Survival Challenge matches. The show's NXT Deadline. It's a new match concept. 5 people, 5 men in the men's match, 5 women in the women's match. 25 minutes. Whoever gets the most pinfalls wins the match in that 25 minutes. The hook is that if you're pinned, you're kind of out of the match for a bit, and you're kind of in a penalty box, and you can't accumulate pinfalls of your own. Tyler, I'm at a position where, like, I'm very interested to see how this goes, because I think it could be pretty fun. I also think it could be an absolute train wreck of a match of like epic proportions, just because of all the pinfalls that you're going to need to have to make it interesting. And I know, depending on how it's done, that can work, but it also can be so bad. Where are you at on this concept, and I mean, what's it doing for you from an interest perspective?
Yeah, so I think broadly I'm intrigued, and I like that in wrestling. I like that we're getting a new match idea. We don't have that very often in the sport, right? So sometimes those can go well, sometimes they cannot go well. And my prediction on like the larger view of this match itself is, we're going to have 2 on the show. I think Shawn Michaels today said, like, don't be mean. I'll be sad if you're mad at me for the way the show goes. I think was something on his call.
Did he really say that?
Something like that. He probably said it as a joke. I just read a transcript. But, I think there'll be things that we'll see live, and they will too, where it's like, okay, 80% of this is a really good idea. Let's maybe start the match with everybody going instead of having it be like War Game style where they come in. Or the penalty box thing, maybe let's get rid of that, and we'll just have like this. I mean, you got to have something a little different to make an Iron Man match. But like something like that will be tweaked, and I think this has the potential to be a pretty good match. And like all types of matches, I'm against like, hey, it's November, it's time for the Iron Survivor match. if it fits for a situation, I like that. So I'm intrigued, and I think there's some issues, especially on the men's side. As I think it's laid out here, a lot of heels. So it's like, how do you book a match like that? What does that mean? Or 3 heels, a face, and a tweener, basically. So it's I'm curious to see how they do that. The women's match I'm very excited for, and you've got kind of 2 people in both those matches. You've got Carmelo Hayes, and you've got Roxanne Perez, who are like, you would think the like black and gold era, you always had the anointed one who you knew at some point was going to be the champion, get a run, then go up to the main roster. And it feels like those 2 more than anybody are in that position. So it's like, do you pull the trigger on both, or do you pull the trigger on one, or neither, and extend that to maybe the WrestleMania time, NXT? So a lot of going on for someone that doesn't watch a lot of NXT. So, but on Saturday itself, I'm personally more intrigued for the NXT show than the ROH show. So yeah, take that for what you will. I think you are as well.
Yeah, I'm too. I'm excited for the match. Like I said, it could be a train wreck, but it could be really. I think it could be really kind of just new and fresh if done right. I like that it's not for a championship. I like that the titles are not on the line, so that you want there to be stories here, but the story is also just that there's opportunity here, and all, these people, and they told a story as to how the people got these opportunities. You got the Hall of Famers in the room, they debated, they picked them that way, and then the last person, had to wrestle their way in. So I can green like that, thumbs up. But as far as the winners go, I think you absolutely pull the trigger on both those acts right now. Like Carmelo Hayes and Roxanne Perez, I think they're your winners here. Clearly, like on the men's side, you could do Grayson Waller, as Sean's pointing out here. But I think, I don't know, I kind of think you want maybe a little something for Carmelo Hayes in terms of like this being a first time match. Him being the winner of that, you can really milk that. If Grayson Waller is the winner, I think that's fine too, because it gives Braun Breaker like another feud to have, in NXT, which is strong. And he'd have one with Carmelo Hayes too, but that's a tough situation because I don't think you really want either guy to take that L. On the women's side, I think it's very obvious that Roxanne Perez needs to win this and go on to face Mandy Rose and take the title from her. I think the women's match is more of a layup than the men's matches as far as how to book your way out of it.
Yeah, I would agree. So that's what I'm curious to see how they go booking wise. It feels, I don't know, maybe that's just me being more interested than usual, or just the zeitgeist stuff. It feels like this is like one of the more impactful NXT shows since the whatever, the paint splatter era. They felt, there was stuff going on, but it felt a little not as consequential as a lot of the takeovers were. It feels like we're kind of veering back into that era where we kind of actually see, obviously the pipeline is more streamlined here as well. Like when that NXT was like the pipeline for Vince McMahon's WWE, it was weird, and then it takes time to transition for Shawn Michaels to Triple H's pipeline. Yeah. And I think we're back to that era where NXT is, not something that's must watch every week, I would say personally, but it's something that you got to kind of keep your other eye on, because you might see, you're actually going to see the Stars of Tomorrow. And when they transition, they're going to be the same character and get the chance to do that at the same level, and then sink or swim with a better opportunity, which I think is.
Yeah, well said. There's other matches on the show, but the New Day is going to be wrestling Pretty Deadly. I think that's interesting. Really for Pretty Deadly more than it is the New Day, because I think Pretty Deadly's winning. So that's happening. Braun Breaker has a title defense, but we know how that's going to go. So I think the event is like a 2-match show and a 1-match concept. But it's an intriguing one. You mentioned the ROH show, so I want to give a little bit of time to that. Boy, Tony Khan needed to pull out the big guns to get to make Final Battle even like somewhat serviceable at the price point of $40, which I still think is a lot. But going into Dynamite last night, the main event was Claudio against Chris Jericho for the ROH World Title. FTR Briscoe is not on the card. And like Brandon LeClaire mentioned this on the post show where he said that, hey, the Briscoes versus FTR in a dog collar match getting added to this thing without any real hype. Like there was no like video packages between them. You didn't get a promo from the Briscoes. Nothing. Was like a clear response to the, hey, this is going to be $40, and oh my God, there's some backlash out there for that. I saw it in a very similar vein, like, but that's what you do. That's how you promote. Like, look, like this show was not worth $40, and it wasn't even close to worth $40 before you added this match. You added this. I think now it's still not worth $40 in the time that we live, but now it's at least reasonable to say, okay, if you want to see them, you want to see the third match between them, like, all right, you got to pony up, got to pay. And I think people are much more apt to pay now than they would have been 24 hours ago.
Yeah, are you saying it's worth like $40 in 2032, like when inflation has made that worth like $11?
Well, no, yes. No, that's not what I meant, but I agree. I meant more like, you're conditioned to pay $10 a month for whatever you want, and but I just think it's a smart move on his point, on his part to play that card. I mean, I'm surprised it wasn't playing earlier, but I think it was the right move.
Yeah, for sure. And on the preview show on YouTube yesterday, I kind of pulled the chat, and I think some pretty hardcore wrestling fans are in the space, and not one of them said that they were going to watch it via paying for it. There's lots of other options in there. You can assume what that was, but not a single person in the chat yesterday was going to pay for this pay-per-view. I don't know if any of those answers would change if you were here yesterday and you're here now and now you're going to pay. Please let us know. But I think he needed to do it. I think be a decent number for that, but he would like a build. But again, if you want to say ROH is too much on AEW, then you can't really complain too much about the bill. That's kind of where I am here. Like, that's enough for like that core segment that are buying ROH and AEW pay-per-views. Just having that on the, a note from the Briscoe saying you're gonna have a match is enough to probably get back to your floor for what you're expecting here, and hopefully, all FTR especially get a nice bonus for coming in and saving the day.
Yes, hopefully they do, because it's going to be a brutal match, and I think it's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to watching that too. The rest of the card, I'm kind of all those matches could be on Rampage, honestly. And some of them.
Let's say if you put this card on Dynamite, let's say next week instead of on Saturday, like I'd be worried for that number. It'd probably be under 800,000, so for free, So that kind of tells you about the quality of the card and how much.
Yeah.
A lot of these same things, and Juice Robinson is not a draw for anyone but a niche audience, and I like Juice Robinson, but there's not, besides this match, there's nothing to be like, oh, I got to see that. So. Right,
and that's what it needed. Like it needed the draw. I mean, it's like those UFC pay-per-views where you lose your it doesn't happen often, but you lose your main event and the co-main because people are injured or they don't weigh in, and you end up having like the third match on the pay-per-view in the headline spot. It's just like, that's not drawing any buys. I mean, that's just not going to draw any buys, and this kind of felt like that. Last thing before we wrap up here, in the Tony Khan media scrum yesterday, he teased that, hey, I'm not going to talk about the ROH television deal right now, but I will talk about news around that on Saturday after Final Battle. That sounded to me like there's going to be some news of some kind on that front. He also said in that same kind of answer that he's going to be pulling ROH out of AEW programming, which is a thumbs up. I think that he's got a deal to announce. I don't have any news to break on that, but that's just my personal opinion, like reading the tea leaves. Either a deal of there is no deal and we're going to move to YouTube or something, or that, hey, there is a deal and this is how it's going to work. Either way, I think that's good for ROH. I think it's good for AEW also.
Which also I think makes Claudio winning here more of a possibility, because I don't know if you want if you want Jericho off of your AEW content, and that stipulation doesn't make any sense with the William Regal disaster last night either. So something to look out for. But yeah, I'm curious what you think. I tend to agree with you. I think it's going to be an announcement of like, hey, either we got one or we didn't, and now this is our future, and then we'll try to hope for one another time. But I mean, that'd be a big L to take to just put it on YouTube when you could have done that from the beginning. So hopefully it's not
yes.
for that. But what do you think is the answer? Like, is it on something or is it on YouTube? And if it is on something, what do you think it is? Do you think it's cable? Do you think it's something else?
I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be on something else. I don't think it's gonna be on cable. I kind of think that maybe that there's some kind of streaming deal there, where the library can live and weekly content can live as well. Because really, like, the library, there's value in that. I think there's people that would pay for that. Joel,
there's some great stuff out there.
ROH on Twitch, maybe, I don't know. But that's kind of my thought. With the TV deal, it's always like I get to this point where I'm like, okay, if I'm a TV executive, why do I want Ring of Honor more than I want like AEW? Like the AEW brand is so much bigger than Ring of Honor's. So it's like, if I'm gonna give another hour of programming and 90% of the talent is the same, wouldn't I just want an extra hour of AEW programming instead of this ROH thing? That's what always threw me off with the TV part of this. It's just like there isn't the same value of the Ring of Honor letters as there is AEW, and the talent's all the same. So if I'm that TV executive making that call, I'm saying, sure, here's X amount of millions, but I want more AEW. There's more value there. So for that reason, I think it's gonna, end up on some kind of streaming service with the library too. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that is definitely more. What that means is different than like, hey, if you're on cable, you're on cable. If you're streaming, there's like a spectrum, right, to fit on that. And I think the two obvious things that come to my mind, again, no reporting here, just me reading the tea leaves, as Tracy pointed out very early on in the show, Discovery Plus and HBO Max are merging. It's looking like early spring 23. It's going to be called Max, just MAX. So that is a very obvious home that we've all talked about. But now the merging of that can be like a tile, because like HBO is going to be a tile in all, TCM and Studio Ghibli and all that stuff is a tile. I think this could be a tile on their streaming content. The other thing is, like, as Steve pointed out here, like, Tony Khan owns the what's left of Honor Club, which was a disaster technically, just being a consumer of it. I can't imagine under the hood how bad that is. And maybe that's why it's taken so long to do this, where, I don't know if you would, maybe the shows would be on YouTube, and then you could watch the library, and you could watch pay-per-views for a discounted price for $10, whatever. Or, you pay the $10 a month. You get
$40.
Yeah. So, you're paying $30 for each show instead of $40 by doing this. And so maybe that is why it's taken so long, because he's been trying to make that user-friendly. And if you own it and have all the means to do it, that's probably more value in the long run than, licensing yourself out to somebody. So, I think one of those two options will be the case, but we'll see. Hopefully there's something.
Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be something. So that's good. I mean, it's good. It needs it. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned Claudio, and it's like, yeah, that is, that's that, depending on what that deal is, right? Like, him winning makes sense, or it doesn't, and if they're going to be on TV, maybe you do want to keep it with Chris Jericho,
like as the Moxley filter that I bring up all the time, like he said, it's over between the two. And if Claudio's part of JAS, it is not over. So I tend to believe Moxley. So like, if you're betting odds, that's the time to hit the market and bet Claudio, who was the underdog before that, I would presume.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good point. Good point. All right, man. Very good. Well, we went a little long today, but we had a lot to talk about. So this was good. A great show, great time. Joel, Steve, Zach, Sean, Azan, Ren, Tracy, and everybody, all of our regulars, and all of you guys who joined us either late or just throughout the show. Thank you very much. Very much appreciate it. We'll have all your coverage of NXT and Ring of Honor PWTorch.com this weekend, so you keep it locked there. And subscribe to the channel. Click the little notification button so you know that when we go live, we are live every day with preview shows, recap shows. We try to fire this thing up every day and talk a little bit of wrestling. So it's been a blast, Tyler. Appreciate it, man. Hopefully your Blue Jackets do better this weekend.
Well, hey, no, hopefully not. I mean, I hope they get Connor Bedard. If you know hockey, he's
yes.
Supposed to be like the next Wayne Gretzky. So it's like your team was going to tank, my team's going to tank. So and also just plug wise, I'll be on Stephanie Chase's channel tonight. We're going to do a Ring of Honor preview. So I will tweet out you just search her name. It's what Stephanie Chase Wrestling, right? So we're filming that at like 8:30. It's going to go on her site, on her YouTube channel after that. So please check that out and give Stephanie a follow, like, subscribe, notify all her stuff as well too.
Awesome. Yes. And if you missed the show last week, Stephanie was on and it was a blast. She's great. And so, yeah, that'll be a can't miss show with you over there, Tyler. So awesome. Can't wait for that. All right, guys. Thank you again. We'll catch you guys next time. See you.